Hello, everyone. So it's pretty late right now. I was playing cards with some of my friends, so it's 12 o'clock. I'm thinking it's going to be a pretty short one, but I was going to talk about the difference between animals and humans, but like I said, kind of want it to be a short one, so I'm going to talk about how I'm going to talk about Albert Camus' quote that happiness is a moral obligation. Now, there's a few things I wanted to talk about with this quote. So, the first thing is our definition of happiness. So, when Albert Camus is talking about happiness in this circumstance, he's not talking about the emotion of happiness. So, whenever we have emotions that come through us, right? We feel anger. We have the emotions of happiness, as we have the emotions of frustrations, of sadness, of gloominess. These are all emotions that affect us. So they are beyond our control. They are part of our brain. They are produced from our brain, and then are a lot of them neurotransmitters that influence how our brain works and how we kind of perceive the world. And that's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about how you always have to feel elated. He's talking about you always have to um, your attitudes and reactions towards these feelings always have to be happy. So I distinguish it towards being joyful. So um, what does that mean? Well, uh, uh, one thing one quote we can branch off from is Viktor Frankl's quote. He from Man's Search for Meaning, where he says, "The last of the human freedoms, the ability to choose your attitude in any given circumstance." And that's what Albert Camus is talking about in this sense, is your attitude in any given circumstance. So your attitude in any circumstance should be one that is like happiness. It's elation. You should not feel, you should react joyfully to all situations. It's your moral obligation. So even though you might not feel happy all the time, or might not feel sad at all the time, or regardless of how you feel, you still have your ability to choose your attitude and your reactions to these feelings, to these emotions, to these thoughts. And that's what Albert Camus is talking about, is that it's your moral obligation to react happily or react joyfully to these situations. One example I wanted to talk about before I close this section off is a perfect example of Monkey D. Luffy. And Monkey D. Luffy is from the manga and anime of One Piece. He's the main protagonist, but what you see is he's always smiling. And as a child, watching this show, I always thought he was just always happy, always elated. You know, that emotion of happiness, that emotion of that emotion is always feeling happy, always feeling pleasurable, right? But it's not until I started watching the movies that one movie in particular, I forgot which one it is. It's a weird art style. If you haven't watched the movies, spoilers, all right. But in this one movie, essentially, the Straw Hats go to this island, are playing games, but these games are kind of breaking the Straw Hats apart and creating fissures. And Luffy sees these fissures and trying to keep them together. Well, one by one, the Straw Hats are captured and essentially only leaving Luffy. And he has to go through this pretty much horror show and of all his friends pretty much in a blob of just Goo and them yelling to him, "You never, or save us, Luffy," or are insulting him. It's like, you never were good enough, and pretty much like forcing, like, just horror. And in these moments, he's not smiling or anything, which is kind of weird for Luffy because he's always smiling. But what happens when he finally gets out and he's laying there and his friends are going, and is that he's laying there and he has this moment of like shock, of just like hesitation. And it's that hesitation of, okay, how am I going to react in this situation? What's my attitude in this situation? Am I going to tell them all about it? Is it worth telling them about it? How am I going to express myself in this situation? And in that hesitation, he chooses. And in the next scene, he smiles. He smiles. And that's the end of the movie. But, as the watcher, you realize that he's not feeling happiness. The emotions of happiness are not there. Maybe of relief, of seeing them. But in that hesitation, you see the horror that he went through, the tragedy. And instead of giving in to sadness and sadness, he decides to smile. And that's Albert Camus' quote, as it's our moral obligation to be happy. It's to be joyful. It's to choose to be joyful in situations, regardless of where you're at. And in that scene, in Monkey D. Luffy's persona in general, he's always happy. And the only times he's actually serious are the times where he needs to be serious, where there's moral failings around him, and it's him going and saying, you know what, this is actually serious. This is something I don't need to laugh off. It's almost a moral imperative that I take this seriously. You hurt my friends. You hurt our people around you. Now I'm going to be serious. But in everything else, in any like inconvenience or tragedy or anything like that, he's happy. They might be going through the sea and it's thundering and lightning, everything's raining, and he's just like, let's go, let's do this. So in like things that don't like matter intrinsically, that aren't morally imperative, he decides to be happy or joyful. I'll say joyful, and lives out Albert Camus' statement of it's our moral obligation to be happy. So for Luffy, he chooses to be happy. He's joyful. And that lesson is something we can learn as well. That even though we might not feel happiness, we can still be joyful about the lives we have. We can still be grateful. We can still choose joy, even when we're not happy, even when we're sad, even when we're grieving. We can still choose joy and gratitude in this life. And I think that's what Albert Camus is trying to say. And it's very deep. So yeah, choose to be joyful, even when you're not happy. And that's a good spot to end it off. So I will see y'all Monday, because tomorrow I'm not doing a vlog video. So Monday, I'll see y'all on Monday. Bye.